Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to League Racing TV here for round number 4 of the Esports Masters League Console 1 tier. We're here, it's the home of British motorsports. It is time for the British Grand Prix. My name is, of course, Michael Edwards, going to be taking you through the action as always on a Wednesday evening. And guys, I am very much looking forward to this one. Of course, Silverstone, an incredible circuit. But let's have a little look at the track in question here, as it is a 5.8 kilometer, 3.6 mile circuit in length, 18 corners, two DRS zones. Sorry, one down the Wellington Straight and one down the Hangar Straight. Of course, the Wellington Straight leading into Brooklands and Luffield, and of course the Hangar Straight leading into Stowe. A lot of iconic corners around this circuit, and a lot of testing times for all the teams out there here tonight. And the real question is, who is going to be coming out on top? Well, let's have a little look at the drivers that are, of course, going to be competing here tonight. Of course, in the Red Bulls representing FGE, we have Brent and Paulus again coming through with the same lineup. They've been absolutely smashing it this season so far for FGE. LRs, Turbo Toms and Leo Lopez in the Mercedes are going to be lining up for Team LR. CPI coming through with Francesco Lego and CPI Finley. GT10 in the Scuderia Ferrari is going to be coming through with Deval and of course Quartz, and then of course EVE in the Aston Martin is coming through with Mathis and of course Plex. OVR in the Alpines are going to be sporting with Thomas and Nock. And of course, VMV in the Williams F1 car, they're going to be coming through with Clen and Rizzo. And then, of course, FRT coming through with Agonize and Simba Rocks 1. And that is a very strong lineup for FRT right there. Neverlast Racing coming through with Marlon and Tom. And, of course, IRT coming through with Slash and Spyros. And, honestly, it's going to be a very, very interesting circuit. Of course, Silverstone, a track that all these drivers will know like the back of their hand. In my opinion, it's one of the most recognizable tracks to drive on any F1 game, and that is just my personal opinion on that one. So I'm expecting times to be close in qualifying. I'm expecting some very close times in qualifying, but I'm expecting the racing to be even closer as we look to get into the action. Looking at the standings heading into tonight is, of course, Neverlast Racing that leads the way on 66 points, and GT10 currently now in second place with a fantastic result last time out. They climb up the order and only 5 points off Neverlast Racing, so they definitely close the gap. Evisio Racing currently in third on 54 points. CPI, who unfortunately had a absolute horror show last time out in China, they are on 52 points. And then of course we got Optimum Velocity Racing OVR in 5th place on 50 points. So very close in that battle for 3rd place, and only 16 points separating the top 5 teams in the championship. IRT currently in 6th place on 34 points, 3 points ahead of FRT, who of course fielding a very strong lineup here tonight. So it could be an interesting battle between IRT and FRT for that 6th place spot. VMV currently in 8th place on 28 points, with FGE on 25 points. And then LR, a lot of work needs to be done for their season. It hasn't started particularly well for them. They're currently on 4 points, but it can all change. I mean, this is only round number 4 of 12 in the championship, so it can all change. They can definitely get themselves up the order, that is for sure. And of course, once again, guys, a massive thank you to our sponsors for the season in Ronin Printworks 3D, the 3D printing solution. And of course, they do some fantastic work. And we already got Jav in the chat saying I can't wait for it to be raining. Of course, I'm not going to repeat exactly what you said, Jav, but yeah, the British weather can throw those kind of conditions up in the air, and we know that very, very well. As we got Addies in the chat saying, hello, Addies, how are you doing, mate? Hopefully you're having a fantastic evening. I'm looking forward to some fantastic action that we are about to see out there on track. And speaking of out there on track, the drivers are just beginning to funnel out of the pit lane. So without further ado, let's head to the action out on track, shall we? As we head on over and we see who is going to be the lead car out of the pits, and it's going to be Agonize, of course, representing FRT. Even though it says ET8 in front of his name, he is a part of the FRT team now. So this is going to be a very interesting, and as Jav alluded to, in terms of the conditions, I mean, that right there is typical British weather. Overcast. It's not quite raining yet, but there's always that threat of rain. So, I mean, we could be seeing rain here in qualifying at some point, potentially. Who knows? So it makes it even more important that everyone gets their lap times on the board as quickly as possible, just so that they are not under pressure later on into the session. Of course, Agonize will be the first man to set us on a lap around the fantastic Silverstone circuit, and we are going to give him the full screen privilege of this one as he looks to get himself set up. Make sure his ERS is going to be on hot lap as he comes through club in the club corner, and he begins his lap now, coming down the Hamilton straight in towards turn number 1 at Abbey. Fly through there through from first braking zone down into turn number 3 at Village as he gets the car hooked up 4th gear into entry, and of course the loop turns 5 and 6, which will unleash you onto the Weldon Straight with DRS wide open on the run down in towards Brooklands. 5th gear down to 4th gear, keeping it very tight through Brooklands, so really set yourself up here for left field. Left field, of course, is all about getting a good exit there as you come through the right hand kink at Woodcut onto the Old National pit straight as you head down in towards Cops as you are flat out there through 7th gear as Agonize was there, and now into the brilliant section of Maggots and Beckett as you look to get a good run, hooking it up on the exit of Chapel onto the Hanger Straight. Is a 1 minute 2.5 middle sector split for Agonize as he heads down into Stowe corner, breaking down, throwing the car in 6th gear. The gear of choice of Agonize there does not drift out too far wide, which can happen as we head now in towards Vale. And then of course in front of the grandstand through the club section and across the line will come Agonize to set the first lap time of the evening. It's a 125.8. As Ivan Kanai in the chat supporting his Neverlast Racing teammates, of course, here tonight, leading the championship, but only by a handful of points. So this is a very important race as we're getting the first load of times in. And speaking of Neverlast Racing, of course, they've been in a battle all season long so far with CPI, and Francesco Lago has just put himself in prime position right now on provisional pole after the first run of lap times. But Tom, they're crossing the line for Neverlast Racing up into P8. So I mean, at the moment both CPI drivers out qualifying the Neverlast Racing pairing, and of course let's not forget that it's so close between some of the teams in terms of the championship. Of course, GT10 5 points behind Neverlast Racing, Evisio Racing are 2 points ahead of CPI, and it is still going to be extremely difficult for Neverlast Racing to really try and keep these guys behind. Of course, they do have pedigree. I mean, they have done very well in previous seasons here in the Esports Masters League, so I am expecting, of course, Neverlast Racing to continue on that kind of trajectory and continue to improve. As we're on board with Deval here coming through Cobb's corner, as I have a lovely sip of my drink as we go through Margaret and Beckett. He's not on a push lap. Slash, though, is on an out lap. Of course, he's the only one that is going to be out of sync with the rest of the field. Now, whether that is done intentionally so that he can potentially get the best of the conditions on all of his runs, it's going to be interesting. Of course, we've got about 12.5 minutes to go here in qualifying. Francesco Lago for CPI currently tops the times, and it is a 1:25.7 for Francesco Lago. Of course, Agonize for FRT currently in P2 as Thomas or OVR in P3 and CPI Finley there in P4. EVE's Plex in P5 and OVR Knock in P6. On board with Slash now, though, as we're going to go to the broadcast camera to see what Slash is going to do. That's a big puff of smoke there as he locks up the rear tires coming into the Vale chicane, and now he gets his lap underway as we run down in towards turn number 1 at Abbey, and then of course through Farm coming to the break-in for Village. Through Entree, and now of course the loop on to the Wellington straight. DRS wide open for Slash to see what the first sector split is going to be for him, as he's definitely 27.4 there in the first sector. So an interesting line there as well. Of course, on the Wellington straight from Slash, he kept it very middle of the track as well, which is a little bit odd for me. I thought he would have been far to the right hand side of the track to of course open up Brooklands, but he kept it very middle of the track for the first sector, so maybe definitely a little bit more time he could find in our first sector. But middle sector split now, and it's going to be a 1:02.5. This will put him around Agonized lap time as long as he can keep up with him in the final sector, coming through Stowe now in towards the Vale chicane, and of course now through Club to the line will come Slash, and I think that little snap that we saw on the exit of Club is what cost Slash there, because it is a 25.9 for him. Of course, he is out of sync with the rest of the field. Thomas has just started his second flying lap of the session, and he's coming through Village now. Currently in P3 is Thomas, so definitely a driver looking to improve on his positioning here tonight. And of course, OVR have had some good results in the recent races, which has seen them propel themselves up the order in terms of the championship. And you see Thomas there marginally up through sector 1 as we go through left field now, looking for a good exit there. 4th gear, upshifting into 5th, and now onto the national pit straight, the old pit straight in F1 as well, but through Cops we go. Now in towards Maggott and Beckett, very easy just to take too much of the inside curbs, trying to gain as much time as possible. Very easy to make a small invalidation on your lap, but Thomas has done well enough there in towards Stone now, where it's very easy to drift out wide on the exit and pick up that invalidation. But Thomas did not pick up invalidation, but instead he's going to peel off into the pits because I think he is down on his lap time. But now we've got Finley coming through the final corner now for CPI. Ian Brooks is now a CPI 1-2, and Francesco Lago is over a 10.5 up on his lap time. So Francesco finding time out there in qualifying and is looking to increase the benchmark as Spyros there goes up into P3 for IRT as a big snap of oversteer on the exit of Club for Francesco Lago, and that's definitely cost him a bit because he's improved, but not by as much as he would have hoped, as he remains on a 25.7, but it's a 25.7 0-3 now. So I believe we just saw that was Mattis going up into P6 for EVE, one of the Ferraris crossing the line. I think that was Dival, yes it was, and he's currently down in 19th place, which is unfortunate for him. Of course, the only driver missing from the session is Leo Lopez from the lineup, so not great for LR. Of course, they are under pressure to start putting some points on the board because they've only got 4 points. They're averaging a point a race at the moment in time, which is not ideal if you are LR. Of course, GT10 looking to continue on their fine form that they had so far this season, where they're currently sat second in the championship, 5 points off the back of Neverlast Racing. So big opportunity here for GT10 to really put their name solely in the hat, and that's what they're going to need. They're going to need a big performance here, see if they can jump Neverlast Racing, because right now Marlon and Tom currently 11th and 12th, and they're being outqualified by both of the OVR drivers and both of the EVE drivers and both of the CPI drivers, but they're ahead of both of the GT10 drivers. So I mean, if you're Neverlast Racing right now, your nearest rivals are behind you, but do you want that many cars in between yourself as well as the likes of the CPI and EVE lads? As I believe we just saw Plex improve on his lap time up to P2 on the front row, splitting the CPI pairing, as Agonize is just getting his lap underway. Of course, FRT, Simba Rocks also racing here tonight for FRT. He's currently down in P13, and it's unlucky for some, but not unlucky for all. We'll come back on board with Agonize in just moments time, as on board with Marlon, marginally down in the first sector. And of course, it's big for NLR to try and increase the gap and capitalise, as they did last week on CPI's downfall in China. But I mean, the teams that capitalised the most were of course GT10 and EVE and OVR. They were the ones who capitalised the most in that race. And Neverlast Racing, while they lead the way, 5 point gap is not comfortable for them, so they're going to be looking to try to do better. But Marlon drifting wide through Chapel, and just picking up that invalidation there. So Marlon will have to try and get his mind reset to go again on his final runs. Tom in the middle sector, 2 attempts up for Tom, and this is looking nice and smooth from Tom right now, and this could put him in contention to maybe get himself onto the second row. If he can hook up the final sector, he might be threatening the front row. So let's see what Tom's going to do. For Neverlast Racing, the championship leaders, as Quartz improves up into P8 up ahead. And here comes Tom to the line. P4 for Neverlast Racing's Tom. So Tom there getting himself onto the second row, agonized. Unfortunately for him, he is currently in 6th place, as Tom's Turbo Toms for LR, the lone LR driver here tonight, looking to represent his team the best he can, because LR definitely needs some points on the board. First sector split, and he's down by 300 of a second, but there's plenty of time to be found out there on this lap for Toms, that is for sure, and most of it I would think would be in the middle and final sector, and we're going to see if he's going to be able to find that time as we go through Cobb's flat out 8th gear there for Turbo Toms. We come now in towards Maggots and into Beckett as we look to get a good exit through Chapel, but That is not what Turbo Tom's needed. Taking too much speed and then causing a invalidation. Imwa doesn't look to be on a lap right now, but Simba Rocks is for FRT. So let's see what Simba can do as he comes through Maggots and Beckett's now. Looking for a good exit through Chapel. And now he is on the deployment. He's nearly 2/10 up on his lap time. That is going to be getting him close to his teammate. Currently in P6 in Agonize. Let's see if Simba can find the time in the final sector. Keeps it all valid, which is ideal for him. As we got around about 2 minutes to go in qualifying. So this will be Simba Rock's one and only opportunity to get himself up the order. And it's P6 for right now for Simba Rocks. As Tom has retired from the session as well. I'm guessing no improvement from Tom. I'm thinking he might have just come into the pits and missed the time. So yeah, heartbreak there for Tom. But a lot of the drivers are out on track on an out lap, but this man is on a flying lap, and that is EVE's Mathis. A little bit out of sync with the rest of the field as he comes through sector 1, marginally down on his sector 1 time into towards left field now. Oh, big snap into the wall, and that is EVE Mathis out of qualifying. The best it's going to be for him is P9. As Slash is going to be the first man to get his final qualifying runs underway here as we go in towards Abbey and Farm, breaking down in towards Village as we go through third gear right there. Slash looking to do everything he can to improve and get himself inside the top 10 for IRT as we head down the first sector split in towards Brooklands. He's 800 or a second up on his lap time as we go through a left field now. Imwa's retired from the session. Heartbreak there for Imwa, who appears to be in behind as Simba Rocks also retires from the session. Of course, his qualifying was done based on his previous lap that he did. Currently in P6. Will he stay P6? So that's the question. A lot of times yet to come in as we are about to see the checker flag be waved here in qualifying. Slash though, 700 of a second up on his lap time. This will be enough to get him inside the top 10, but will be enough to keep him in it? That's going to be the main question, and we're going to find out all the answers here into the Vale chicane. As Slash there, I think we've got a bit of connection issue there with Slash, but through the final corner, and yeah, big issues there for Slash at the end. As we've got one of the Alpines, and that's OVR Thomas to the line. No improvement there for him. One of the McLarens, that's Francesco Lago, improving on his lap time, and he's done a 25.5. Incredible, as Spyros here for IRT jumps up into P3 momentarily. Oh, he stays here as Finley was unable to find the time to knock him off. Marlon for Neverland Racing pops up into P4. Plex for EVE takes provisional pole position. Who's next man across the line as Agonize is over at 10th lap? Will Agonize be able to knock Spyros off of P3 right now? Will he be able to knock Marlon down to the third row of the grid? Agonize through the Vale chicane and now in towards the club section. EVE's Plex on provisional pole, and I think he's got it as well. Plex with a big final lap, displacing Francesco Lago and CPI from pole position by 1/100th of a second. Ladies and gentlemen, let's run you through the order. It is, of course, Plex or EVE taking pole position ahead of Francesco Lago for CPI, who will join him on the front row. Behind him, we have Agonize getting our P3 in the end with Spyros in P4. Marlon in P5 with CPI's Finley in P6. In our last, Tom in P7 with Simba Rocks in P8. Nock and Thomas OVR rounding out the top 10 in 9th and 10th respectively. Outside the top 10 we got Murphy's, Brent, Quartz, Boris, Slash, Turbo Toms, Dival, Imwa and Rizzo, who are of course going to be filling out the rest of the grid. Big lap right there from Plex right at the end to snatch pole position, and of course that all important pole position point away from CPI. Of course, a quick reminder of the point system here in the Esports Masters League is of course a point for the pole position, a point for fastest lap in the race as well, and then of course there's 22 points for the race win, 18 points for second place, 15 points for third place, 12 points for fourth place, and then going down from 4th to 15th, the points decrease in increments of 1, so 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, you get the idea, all the way down to 15th place where you get one singular point, and that is of course the final points paying position, so anything after that is no point, no bueno. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, as we look to get the lobby sorted, we're going to go on a short intermission break. Of course, again, a massive thank you to our sponsors at Ronin Printworks 3D. And of course, a quick reminder of the championship standings for you guys. Before we go into the break, Neverlast Racing 66 points, GT10 61, Evisio Racing 54, CPI Esports 52, Optium Velocity on 50, IRT 34, 31 points for FRT, VMV on 28 points, FGE on 25, and LR there on 4 points. Guys, we will be back in just a moment's time after this small intermission. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back after that short intermission break as the drivers are readying up in the lobby again to get themselves into the mindset for 26 laps of the Silverstone circuit, awaiting the 19 drivers out on track. A quick reminder of the circuit as well is, of course, Silverstone is the British Grand Prix, the home of British motorsport. 5.8 kilometers, almost 5.9 kilometers, 3.6 miles in length, 18 corners. So many iconic corners as well. For that, of course, Maggots, Beckett's, Copse, Stowe, Vale Chicane, of course. I mean, the club section, so many iconic corners, and of course, a very, very interesting qualifying session. We saw EVE's Plex take a pole position at the absolute buzzer. He got at the absolute buzzer right at the end of the session, picking up pole position, snatching it away from CPI's Francesco Lago, who will, of course, start alongside him in P2. Very good performance in qualifying from the CPI pairing. And, of course, for Tom, a very good lap from him as well. Marlon, of course, picking up that invalidation. And will we see many 3-second time penalties in this race? Guys in the chat, let me know what is your predictions for the podium, and who do we think is going to be leading the championship come the end of tonight? Will it be Neverlast Racing holding on to the championship lead? Will GT10 take the championship reins away from Neverlast Racing? What about Avisio Racing or CPI? Can they have a huge performance here and close that gap and overtake? That is going to be the big question. Of course, OVR in the mix as well. IRT, though, another team that has had a fantastic qualifying performance here. Same with FRT. So 5th and 6th looking very strong. 6th and 7th looking very strong here tonight. And it could be a very tasty prospect for IRT and FRT to close up on the guys inside the top 5. But, of course, is one thing to do it in qualifying. As we all know, it's a completely separate thing to do it in the race. We got Jav in the chat putting in a prediction of Francesco Lago to take victory ahead of Marlon in second, with CPI Finley in third. So, interesting prediction there from Jav. A double CPI podium, and obviously being split by the Neverlast Racing representative there in Marlon. It's going to be interesting. I think, honestly, if I was to make a prediction, I think obviously Francesco Lago could be a good, always fantastic in the races. So he is definitely a shout, of course, for the race win. I think Plex can get himself a podium here. I think P2 maybe goes to Plex. And you know what? I'm kind of thinking, a cheeky podium for, I'm thinking a cheeky podium for IRT, you know? I'm thinking a cheeky podium for IRT. Do I want to go with Slash or do I want to go with Simba? That's the question. Oh, sorry, not Simba. Do I want to go with Slash or do I want to go with Spyros? I'm going to go with Spyros, actually, on the podium. FRT, I think, will have a strong result here. But, guys, we're going to head to the action out on track, because here we go now to those 5 red lights to get underway here in Silverstone. And it's a good start there for Plex ahead of Francesco Lago as we head in towards turn number 1. As the cars appear to be ghosting on my screen early on, as Brent has retired from the session. I'm not sure what's going on here. Everyone is just ghosting all over the place. I think we got a bit of a glitched lobby here. And yeah, I think I think everyone is retiring out on track. And we got we got Harvey in the chat saying he forgot to change the settings, and Jav in the chat saying red flag, take the results. No, can't be doing that, Jav. Didn't even make it for the first sector. Well, I mean, we will be trying to get ourselves back on track as quickly as possible. Honestly, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can waffle for the next few minutes, guys. I don't know, but we had prediction from Jav in the chat. Does anyone else have any predictions for tonight's action? How many safety cars do we think there'll be? Like, obviously, we've had some very close fighting so far this season, and a few sketchy moments so far this season. So the realms of possibility, there could be an incident or two that triggers a safety car. Do we think there will be a safety car? Do we think there'll be any changeable conditions? Of course, British weather, very unpredictable. What are we saying, guys? Do we think we'll have any of those situations happening? And who do you think is going to be the big underdogs of this race to keep an eye on? Let me know that in the chat as well. Let me know that. Of course, once again, a quick reminder of the driver lineup here tonight. Of course, FGE coming through in the Red Bulls with Brent and Paris. LR in the Mercedes. No Leo Lopez here tonight, but Turbo Toms is here, so at least they got one driver in the field. CPI in the McLarens, of course, represented by Francesco Largo and CPI Finley. GT10 in the Scuderia Ferraris, represented by Dival, and of course Quats there in GT10 in the Ferraris. EVE represented by Mathis and Plex in the Aston Martins. OVR represented by Thomas and Nock in the Alpines. VMV represented by Glenn, and of course Rizzo in the Williams. FRT represented by Agonize and Simba Rocks. One in the RBs, and then of course Neverlast Racing, the championship leaders in the Saubers, represented by Marlon and Tom. And last but certainly not least, in the Haas, representing IRT is Slash and Spyros, as the guys are looking to get themselves readied up again. I will say this once, guys, make sure you remember your setups. Remember them. Don't forget them now. That's the last thing you want to do, is forget them. Because the default setup around Silverstone is never ideal. And the drivers are readying up in the lobby now, so we will be getting underway in just a moment's time, which is fantastic. So a quick turnaround right there, which is what we love to see. Of course, again, a reminder of the point system here. 22 points for the race win, 18 points for second place, 15 points for third, 12 points for fourth, 11 points for fifth, and it goes down in increments of 1 to P15, where you get one solitary point. Everything below P15, no points, nil point. And then, of course, there's a point for the fastest lap of the race, and a pole position point, which has already been collected by EVE's Plex. So EVE picking up the first point of the session, and of course a quick reminder of the standings, as well as Neverlast Racing lead the way, 5 points ahead of GT10 in second place, 66 points to 61. Then 55 points now for Evisio Racing, as they picked up the pole position point, and they are currently P3, as CPI currently in P4 on 52 points, OVR in 5th on 50 points, IRT in 6th on 34 points, FRT in 7th on 31, 28 points for 8th place team VMV Esports. And of course we have FGE Esports, FGE they're in 9th on 25 points, and then of course we have LR on 4 points, currently down in 10th place. Drivers are now on the grid, making sure they got their setups and their race strategies all sorted for tonight. Of course, it is going to be a one-stop out there on track, as I believe no one, unless they got damage, would be making a two-stop, unless you know, we got safety cars or something like that as well to come into play. Like, that'd be the only way I'd see anyone risking a two-stop strategy around here. But we're heading to the track right now because the 5 red lights are about to go out again for the second time. And we are lights out and away we go in Silverstone, as it is a great start there for Plex coming off Francesco Lago. Looking down for the midfield, we got both the Neverlast Racing drivers trying to duel it out with CPI's Finley. Finley sending one down the inside of Marlon, but unable to get that done. That's allowed Tom to have a little look on the inside, and around the outside you see Simba Rocks 1 in the mix as well, as it is free wide momentarily, but Simba there backing out as Finley and Tom battling it out as we got free wide in towards Brooklands for lap number 1, and it is Nock that's going to get through up into P9. Interesting in terms of the tyre selection, only 3 drivers bucking the trade, going different here at the start of the race, as we got Mathis and Slash side by side through Cobbs there on lap 1. Fantastic to see as they all funnel through Maggots, Beckett and of course Chappell for the first time in this race. But yet the 3 drivers going for a different strategy. Brent in P10, Imwa in P15 and of course Rizzo in P19, all going for a set of the soft tyres. Everyone else in the field on a set of the mediums. As it looks like at this moment in time, everything is just cooling down. It's in fact that Spyros here has gone off and he's lost 3 positions, as Marlon's gone through, Finley's gone through, and Tom, and maybe even Thomas down the inside. Thomas getting through as well. Spyros there, I'm not sure what happened to him in club, but oh, contact, as I think he locked up the rears and gone into Nock there, and that's going to drop Spyros well down the order. Is there wing damage on that Haas? It looks like he's missing the front right end plate, and the front right end plate is completely gone on that Haas right there, and that is not good for the IRT pairing, and it's not good for the prediction that I had, because I actually backed IRT for a potential podium here tonight, but it is what it is. Agonize currently up in P3 for FRT, trying to close up to the back of Francesco Lago as we're on lap 2 of 26. Here, Brent getting through on Nock, trying to use those soft tyres as quickly as possible. Of course, he will be pitting earlier, putting on a set in the mediums and trying to go for the undercut and trying to hold these guys off later on in the race. As Francesco Lago with DRS, as simple as you like, the rear wing giving that extra speed that he needed just to get that move done. Plex now down to P2 in this race, and Francesco Lago for CPI now in the race lead. Neverlast Racing doing very well early on in 4th and 6th place, as they are sandwiching the CPI driver of Finley, who is currently in P5. Marlon with the fastest lap in the race thus far. Of course, we're going to be expecting times to improve later on in the session once everyone has made their pit stop. So, psychologically, it's going to be good for Marlon just to get that initial fastest lap, but you'll know that it doesn't mean anything for right now, as Tom was looking very close to the back of Finley as we came onto the Weldon Straight, but runs a little bit wide, tries to hook it back up for the exit to close back up to Finley as we go into left field, and now on the exit looks to try to close up in towards Cobb's corner. Brent there on those soft tyres down in P8, making good progress. In fact, let's have a look at the progress the drivers have made so far in this race, as we see Brent is up 4 positions, Imwa up 5 positions. They're the big gainers. Thomas up 3 positions. The big losers thus far, of course, Spyros down 14 places after whatever happened with him, of course, with the rear lockup, and of course what happened through club. And then of course Simba Rocks 1 and of course Powers both down 2 spots apiece. So unfortunate for them, but they haven't lost out as much as Spyros has. As we got Slash and Tom's battling out. Tom's off track, and that's going to allow Powers down the inside in towards turn number 1. Oh, contact there as Slash gets a 3-second time penalty there for cutting the corner. Not what you want to see there. I believe the Slash and it's called Turbo Toms side by side going through turn number 1. Of course, Slash getting ahead of him. Should have been thinking the job was done, but did not realize that Powers was there as well. So yeah, turned in unfortunate contact made between the pair of them. Meanwhile, the trading of positions up at the front as Francesco Lago gets through. Agonized down the inside in towards Stowe, but Plex is going to be able to hold it on the outside. Side by side now in towards the Vale chicane. Agonized going to try to outbreak, hold it around the outside, turn to the inside for the second part of the chicane, and now through Club will get that move done and dusted. And that's going to open things up here for Marlon, who's of course almost boxed Plex in. Plex was having a little look of trying to break out the slipstream, and that is Turbo Tom's out of the race. Into the pit lane he comes, retires on the session. Same with Powers as well for that matter. So both of them not happy. LR not going to be scoring any points here tonight. Powers leaving the session as well, and heartbreak for him as Marlon locking up in towards Brooklands, and I think that would have been a potential warning picked up there for for track extension. We asked Thomas there doing well in P7, Brent in P8. Of course, 5 laps on those soft tyres now, as he is looking to try and close out to get a move done. He needs to use these soft tyres while he has the advantage, because he's not going to have the advantage for much longer, as Plex closing in on Agonize, but Agonize got enough to cover him off, and Agonize not close enough to Francesco Lago to make a move either. And Marlon's just waiting for an opportunity in behind to catch one of them napping. As we're about to go into lap 6 of 26, CPI's Francesco Lago leads the way. FRT's Agonize there in P2. EVE's Plex in P3. Neverlast Racing Marlon in P4. As speaking of Neverlast Racing, you got OVR Thomas and NLR Tom battling out through Village and Entree, and now Tom able to hold on to that position. But of course, Tom versus Thomas, a very spicy battle that we would like to see more of. Meanwhile, Finley there in P5, just doing his race so far, not trying to push as of yet, as he is just settling into the race, as Brent closing in on Thomas and Tom now after the little squabble, but not going to be close enough to make a move, I don't think. Speaking of making a move though, let's go up towards the front. Here comes Agonize down the inside of Francesco Lago, and look at that in behind. Marlon tries to go for the move on Plex, but unable to get the run that he needs, as Plex has left Marlon a little bit napping here, because it has opened the door for Finley to try and have a go. Finley unable to get through on the Neverlast Racing driver. Marlon holds on to P4. Meanwhile, Tom in behind, not close enough to try and take advantage of that. But look at this defensive work right there. Marlon covering the inside, making sure Finley had no opportunity down the inside in towards Village. And now Finley looks like he wants to try and get this move done and dusted right here, right now. Draining a lot of that battery as he looks to go down the inside in towards Brooklyn. Side by side action between the Neverlast Racing and CPI in behind. Look at that. OVR Thomas getting the move done on Neverlast Racing's Tom as well. So both Neverlast Racing drivers losing out of position here, but that is going to upset the apple cart here, as I believe Jav is going to be throwing his hands up in the air right now, and he's going to be fuming in the chat that both of his drivers have been overtaken. Meanwhile, back up towards the front, CPI's Francesco Lago going to retake the race lead, but Plex not going to be looking for a move. He's going to play it smart. Meanwhile, Tom gets back through on Thomas with the help of DRS down in towards Stowe. So Neverlast Racing's Tom back up to P6, and Marlon still there in P5 as it currently stands. Of course, the top 13 all in a DRS train. Very difficult to try and make moves as you weigh things up, as Quartz is down the inside of Nokia. GT10 versus OVR. Big rear loss there for Nock, and oh, as he's contacted with Simba Rocks, who was on his outside, and those two just got tagged onto each other, and both of them off the track. Heartbreak there. Simba Rocks has lost more time than what Nox has in terms of where they are, because at least Nock is still in the DRS train, and unfortunately for Simba Rocks, he is now fallen outside of it. Meanwhile, Quad having a look at Brent, and he tried all the way around the outside of Cobb's corner, but has the run going in towards Maggots and Beckett. Job done there for Quartz, and have those soft tyres now reached the end of their usefulness, as Brent and Imwa currently in this train. Are they going to have enough to stay in this train? Francesco Lago back into the race lead as he is doing battle right now with Agonize. We're going to stay on board with Plex for the time being, as Quartz and Brent trade positions, because Brent comes into the pit lane, and there we go, the question has been answered. After those soft tyres falling away from Brent, the answer is yes, as he looks to get a fresh set of boots on, and he's opted for the set the medium compound tyres. We're going to have to keep an eye on Brent late into this race, because of course he is in this train, so he might be able to get a nice little undercut, get himself up the order just a little bit further. Finley though all over the back of Plex here for P3, as Plex forced into the move on Agonize, and the contact made, and that is Plex dropping down to P4, but everyone is ghosted momentarily there, and Plex, oh, Marlon losing the back end on traction, and that is not good for Marlon, as he loses out the spot to not only his teammate Tom, but also to OVR's Thomas as well. Thomas looking to try and get a move done. Meanwhile, up ahead you're seeing Finley and Plex again. A little bit of mind games there. I think Finley using his battery. Obviously, he put Marlon under pressure, and that Marlon had to go for a move on Plex, and it didn't work out. Sorry, yeah, he pushed Marlon, who had to go for a move on. He pushed Plex, who had to go for a move on Agonize. Sorry, yeah. So that has allowed, of course, CPI's Finley to hold on to a fantastic spot for CPI. But now Francesco Lago 1.2 up the road. He's broken DRS. Agonize after a little bit of a scruffle through Brooklands. Outside of DRS now, as Thomas and Marlon battling out side by side. Marlon trying to hold it around the outside. Big rear end snap. That's going to allow Quartz down the inside. Quartz backs out of it though. Smartly there from Quartz. Meanwhile, in behind you got Nock and Simba Rocks battling out as well for 11th and 12th, as GT10's Daval there in 12th now, as he's overtaken Nock for P12 in this race. But what this has done That little bit of a squabble right there has allowed Francesco Lago to get away from these guys, and the pace that Francesco Lago has is it's always incredible. So these guys are going to have to think of another way to catch up to him now, because that gap is growing between Agonized and Francesco Lago. But Plex now up into P2 as he's overtaken Agonized, and this is going to be a little bit of a temporary truce between the pair as they look to DRS each other back up to the back of Francesco Lago here. Of course, Plex, the man who put it on pole position, so he does have the pace around here. We're going to see if he's going to be able to use that pace to close in the race. The gap is 1.6 seconds, 1.7 now, as we go through the loop and entry here onto the Wellington Straight. It is important for Plex and Agonized to not lose each other time if they want to try and take a race win here. That is what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to work together. And of course, they're going to hope that the likes of Thomas and Marlon can cause Finley a few issues in behind. Because the last thing they want is to get close enough to Francesco Lago that Finley could do a double overtake on him and make it a CPI 1-2, because if CPI 1-2, we've seen how well CPI work together so far this season, and it will be a long race for everyone in behind. But Agonized now up into P2 as he overtakes Plex, and Tom gets the move done on Finley, and look at Thomas trying it around the outside through the Vale chicane. Into club we go, and Thomas up into P5, and Finley now demoted down to P6 as he has Nevertheless Racing's Marlon in behind him now. What a run there for Marlon. He's going to look down the inside in towards the village, lock up at the front, little bit of wheel to wheel contact between the pair of them as we go through the loop. Quartz there with a beautiful little switchback on Marlon, and she's going to be side by side with the Nevertheless Racing driver as we head on to the Wellington Straight, and it's going to be a run down in towards Brooklands. And I think Finley there actually helping Quartz by moving over, giving Quartz just a little bit of slipstream to keep him ahead of Marlon. So I think Finley there seeing Quartz as less of a threat than Marlon in this race, and he wanted to make sure that the GT10 driver was between himself and the Nevertheless Racing driver. As Plex and Agonized once again trading positions. Tom a little bit too far off the back of this. You can see it is working. They are closing the gap. It is now 1.4 seconds between them and of course Francesco Lago. But I feel that potential undercut is probably going to be needed from both EVE and Agonized if they want to get right back in the DRS of the CPI man, and maybe even jump him in the pit lane phases. That's going to be the question, and it's going to be interesting to see where Brent is going to filter out with all this, because there has been some battling going on. So Brent, he's inside clear air, and he's just been doing his thing there in P15. He's made his pit stop. He's going to the end of the race. He's 3.3 ahead of Inwa as Agonized gets back through on Plex down the Wellington Straight, and that gap is now 1.2, 1.1 as we come onto the old National pit straight, the old F1 pit straight as well, as we head down in towards Cobb's Corner, the old turn 1. As here comes Plex now with DRS and a bit of ERS, as Finley gets the move down on Thomas as well for P5 in the background. You're seeing that gap is floating just around a second now, and Francesco Lago is being reeled in by an unlikely truce between FRT's Agonize and EVE's Plex. And of course they are bringing along the rest of the drivers in behind as well, including this man right here, Quartz, currently in P7 on the back of Thomas. Did not want to risk going for an overtake in towards Village, but he's got such a good run on the exit of Village. He almost had to make a move there through the loop and entry, but decides to stay in behind. So that is where it's going to be for him. Meanwhile, these two by Plex and Agonize, this is not what they should be doing, but they decide to battle now, and that's allowed Francesco Lago to gain half a second here. So mistake has been made, I think, between Plex and Agonize, as they were doing such a good job with that temporary truce, and it's all kicked off again because now they have to have another temporary truce to try and close back up, unless they decide to do it in the pit stop phases. Lap 14 of 26. Here goes Agonize with DRS and a bit of ERS, and he is now up into P2. Plex down to P3. Thomas in P4 with Finley in P5, and into the pits comes Agonize and Plex, following in Francesco Lago. Now I want to see where Brent is going to come out relative to everyone else. You see Francesco Lago there on the set of the soft compound tyres. Everyone switching on to the red wall soft tyres as Brent comes through the final corner. You're seeing them on the run now out of the pit lane. Brent coming through on the start finish straight as Tom's about to be overtaken by Finley. Let's see where Brent is going to come out in all this. Brent on his set of mediums is ahead of Plex, but he's right behind Agonize. So a very good job from Brent on his alternative strategy. He's now in a net P3 in this race for FGE, which is fantastic for him, as we should expect the remaining drivers of Finley, Tom, Mathis, Slash and Deval into the pits at the end of this lap. Of course, Spyros trying to keep going. Of course, he's in 16th place. He's just outside the point playing positions, but he will most likely try to go for fastest lap if he is unable to gain another position at all. As into the pits, yep, come the remaining drivers, and now Agonized has a lot of work to do. 1.8 the gap between himself and Francesco Lago in this race. Brent under pressure early on from Plex. Plex going to try and send one down the inside. Gets the job done. That's going to open things up now for OVR. Thomas tries to outbrake, go around the outside. Wheel to wheel action between the FGE and OVR man. And of course it is OVR's Thomas that gets the job done. And Brent getting absolutely swamped now by these soft runners. Of course, their tyres are very, very fresh, very grippy, and a lot quicker than Brent's tyres at this moment in the race. I think for Brent, he has to try and hope and stay in this DRS train, and hopefully by the end of the race he'll be able to come back. But Marlon putting in a battle nice and early on. He's used a lot of battery. Tried to send one from an absolute age back, did Marlon then. As I think Marlon may be getting a little bit frustrated, a little bit in his own head, as this race is just falling away from him here. Since the instant we saw him tumble down the order earlier on, Marlon's been trying to get himself up the order, but it's just not worked out for him. As Francesco Lago doing absolutely everything right now for CPI, as Plex and Agonize and Thomas now going to be trying their best to close in on Francesco Lago. The gap 1.6, 1.5 now, as we're about to come on to lap 18 of 26. Is this race still on for the likes of Agonize, Plex and Thomas? Is there a potential race win in the air for FRT, EVE or OVR? Or will we see CPI's Francesco Lago just control the rest of this race now? 1.7 the gap, 1.6 the gap as we come on to the Wellington Straight, lap 17 of 26. Francesco Lago leads, Agonized in second place, Plex there in third, OVR Thomas in fourth, with Quartz in fifth, Marlon in sixth, Finley in seventh, and Brent currently in 8th place. But what Brent has done, because he is out of sync with the rest of the drivers, been on those medium tyres, is meant that by the time that Finley has been able to get the overtake done on Brent, he's now lost DRS on the top 6. And this could be absolutely heartbreaking for the CPI driver, because he may end up just falling away now from the top 6. Probably his best hope as Agonize falling down the order, because he was getting double overtaken by both Plex and Thomas, and he has been overtaken by the both of them. Agonize tries to send it back on the inside of Thomas here, but a little bit of contact, and that's going to open things up now for Quartz as Plex sets the fastest lap of the race. And now Plex has the job of trying to close down Francesco Lago. We've seen Agonize try to do it. Agonize was closing in, but not closing in quick enough. Can Plex close in on the CPI man? Will it be OVR Thomas to close in on the CPI man? Will it be Quartz, who is now about to go for the overtake on Agonize up into P4? Can the Ferrari, the GT10 driver, do it? A little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, and that has knocked Quartz offline, as him and Marlon there also touch on the exit, but it's lost Quartz a lot of time here, and yeah, it's not going well for these guys when they are battling. A little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact all the time, and it seems to have a great effect on both cars, as they lose heaps of time from the smallest of touches in this race. But here comes Thomas now on Plex with DRS, job done. 1.4, 1.3 the gap now between these two and Francesco Lago in this race, and that is what they need. They need to close in on Francesco Lago if either of them want any hope of a race win. Thomas with a new fastest lap of the race, and he is currently bringing a whole heap of points for OVR here tonight. Now Tom has made the move on Finley for P7, and this was what I was going to say earlier before obviously the action kicked off towards the front. So it looks like he's going to kick off towards the front again as Plex gets back through on Thomas. What I was about to say, with Tom overtaking Finley, I was going to wonder if Marlon was potentially just going to drop back by a tenth or two to try and allow Tom in DRS, but of course that hasn't worked out for either Tom or Marlon, because Finley has made that move and he's back up in the P7. But I was going to think that might be Finley's best chance of getting back within DRS of the likes of Marlon, Quartz, Agonize, and of course Plex, as Thomas there going to use DRS to close up the gap. 1.0 the gap between Thomas and Francesco Lago. It is a second. It is now just dipped below a second for the first time in a very long time here at Silverstone. Francesco Lago, of course, not looking good on his ERS battery as it currently stands. So Thomas and Plex have done the work. They got themselves back within shooting range of the CPI man, and it's now going to be if Thomas and Plex can continue to close up. Thomas does not have DRS. He's lost a good amount of time through sector 1 on Francesco Lago here, and I think that potentially could be all she wrote, because it took him a long time to get within DRS range of the CPI man, and he's lost 3.5 temps to Francesco Lago almost immediately, and now it's on Plex and Agonize obviously to try and get the overtake done on Thomas here, and hopefully closing in after they get within DRS range of Francesco Lago as we go through Maggots and Beckett here on lap 20 of 26 as we come on to the hangar straight. And here comes Plex. Plex is going to go through on Thomas, and Agonize boxed in slightly as contact between Agonize and Thomas, and Quatse losing the back end. Marlon's through up in the P5 goes the Neverlast Racing man as Quatse, I think, taking the avoiding action, touched a bit of the grass, and grass on your tyres is not ideal. But Plex now up into P2, Agonize back up into P3 for FRT. OVR Thomas now down to P4 as Marlon is now back up to P5 for Neverlast Racing. Can Marlon actually go on a late charge, as apparently my controller is getting very low here, but we have less than 5 laps to go. Agonize with DRS gets through up into P2 goes Agonize. Finley and Tom trading positions as well for P7 and P8, and then I believe in the back we saw Nock and Brent trade positions. Change your controller. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Jav, this controller was fully charged when I turned my PlayStation on about 15 minutes before the race started. The controller, the battery in this is going, but unfortunately it is what it is. It's Francesco Lago 1.5 the gap, and I think right now he is incredibly comfortable in this race. Oh my god, as Thomas late lunge down the inside of Plex. That could have ended absolutely horribly, but everyone gets through that absolutely fine. My god, that was heart in mouth moment right there with Thomas. That was a very late call to go for the move down the inside into Stowe, and my god, how no contact was made there in Stowe, I have no idea. How Thomas got that car stopped that much through Stowe, I have no idea. Marlon though in behind, and he must have had eyes as wide as dinner plates in this car, and he must have just saw a great opportunity potentially to get a late podium in this race, but it didn't happen. No contact happened, so Marlon is still in P5, holding on to a great result here as Quartz is all up his rear as we come on to the hangar straight in just a moment's time for the 22nd time here tonight. Here comes Plex back on Agonize, and with DRS it's going to be a symbol overtake there for Plex as Francesco Lago is just holding on by a thread. The thing is, every single time these guys get close enough that they could maybe get within DRS of Francesco Lago, they decide to fight with each other, and they just end up losing all that time all over again. So it's one of them ones where they do have to work together to get within DRS of Francesco Lago, but they need to time it absolutely perfectly so that they can make the move and already be within DRS. At the moment it seems like they are just about getting close to DRS, and then it just doesn't work out. Meanwhile, Finley and Tom again trading positions. Mathis there currently in P9. He's on the back of these two as he's looking to maybe set himself up a double overtake by the end of the race. Finley though, I actually didn't notice this. Finley with a time penalty, 3 seconds, the same with Slash. I actually did not notice that, but Agonized on the back of Plexure for P2 in this race, and Thomas is close enough that maybe he could get an overtake on Plex as well. As here goes Agonize, job done for him. Here comes Thomas down the inside in towards Stowe. Wheel to wheel action here as Plex able to hold it around the outside, but out the inside for the Vale chicane. Job done. Plex holds on to P3 and the gap is 1.2. Well, of course, everyone draining their battery quite considerably as Thomas almost careering into the back of Plex, and it's just allowing Francesco Lago to hold on here for the race lead. 1.2 is the gap, 1.3 now, as Agonize is just unable to close in enough to put Francesco Lago under pressure and put that race win in contention. As you can see Marlon there giving Thomas a little tap of the rear saying, come on mate, come on, it's time to get a move on. And of course these two do have the ERS advantage. Same with Quads. Look at the battery that Quads has here. Quads, Marlon and Thomas all with the superior ERS compared to the guys up ahead. I mean, if Thomas or Marlon was able to get the move done here, I think they got the battery that they can use then to get within DRS of Francesco Lago. But right now, no one's risking an overtake other than Tom on Finley again for P7. And look at Mathis, as Mathis going to try around the outside in towards the Vale chicane. Wheel to wheel with the CPI driver as he squeezes him to the inside there. There's Finley. And that is the position secured for Finley. Back up towards the front. Thomas on the back of Plex here for the final podium position. The gap between Agonize and Francesco Lago, 1.2. And I think it might just be too little, too late now to catch Francesco Lago here. But the battle for the podium positions is definitely not over and done with just yet. Agonize is currently in P2, the head of the train for the podium. Here comes Thomas all up the rear. Same with Marlon up the rear of the Alpine in front. As Marlon's going to go side by side with Thomas in towards Maggots and Beckett. Neverlast Racing OVR. Can they keep it clean here? As it looks like a big snap on the exit, and that has allowed Quads to get through Marlon, and that has been the story of Marlon's race. Every single time he goes for an overtake, he just can't get the overtake done, and that leads to someone being able to take advantage and get the overtake done on him. Meanwhile, everything is now starting to get spicy in this battle for second place. Francesco Lago 2.2 up the road. He is safe, he is secure now. The only thing that can stop Francesco Lago is a mistake from himself or a 3-second time penalty, which, if you know Francesco Lago, he is very good at keeping the penalty clean, and he is very consistent. Not many mistakes out of the CPI man. So it's a safe bet for Francesco Lago here to hold it for the rest of this race. And to be fair, 2.3 seconds, he can risk obviously driving within himself 80%, and that's a front wing loss there for Thomas. He tried to send it on the inside of Agonize, and that is not going to work out there for him. That might open the door now for Quartz maybe to have a little peek. Meanwhile, look at this now, side by side action, as it looks like Thomas and Agonize with a bit of wing damage. That might just allow Plex to get away here in Magnus and Beckett's, as they're side by side through the Magnus and Beckett's complex, and that's going to allow Quads now on the exit. He's got so much more ERS than these guys, and he's going to be burning all the way down the hangar straight for the final time. Plex has done enough to hold on to P2 as Agonizing Quads there side by side as Marlon. Meanwhile, down in towards the Vale chicane, Thomas tries to outbrake Plex around the outside. Plex holding him to the inside line and around the outside. Is he going to be able to get this done as Francesco Lago takes the race win. Thomas in second place. Plex there in third. Quartz in fourth. Agonized in agony down in fifth place. Neverlast Racing taking home 6th and 7th with Tom ahead of Marlon. Mathis there in 8th place. CPI Finley in 9th. Simba Rocks for FRT rounding out the final spot inside the top 10. And then outside the top 10 we had Knock, Daval, Slash in 13th, Brent there in 14th. Rizzo is going to cross the line for VMV in 15th place. Meanwhile, Imwa potentially going for the fastest lap of the race down in 16th place. Will he get the fastest lap of the race through the Vale chicane? He comes. Big snap at the rear, and no, he won't. So Imwa there losing the rear of the car. Heartbreak for him as he tried for the fastest lap. Wasn't meant to be for VMV getting the fastest lap of the race. And he comes through to pick up no points at all as OVR Thomas gets the in-game driver of the day. But it is this man, Francesco Lago, who will take the top step of the podium. The race win for CPI. And of course, in terms of what we saw in our race, once we saw the battling happening for second and third, it just allowed Francesco Lago to get away from these guys. Once he got out of DRS range, the teamwork that everyone had to do in behind to get back up to Francesco Lago, it literally just was not working. They just could not work as a team well enough to get within the DRS. But Francesco Lago there with the victory here in Silverstone, as I don't believe I am going to be getting the driver standing the race results up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer back over to this screen right now, and I will run through the order one more time once I bring up YouTube to go back through the stream just a little bit, guys. Right, let's have a look here. Okay, right, so our race winner was, of course, Francesco Lago, who will be taking 22 points home for CPI. OVR Thomas in second place with EVE's Plex in third. GT10's Quartz in fourth place with FRT's Agonized in P5. 6th and 7th place for Neverlast Racing as Tom finished ahead of Marlon, who of course was in the battle towards the end for the final podium position. Mathis there in 8th place at EVE with CPI's Finley in P9, and of course FRT's Simba Rocks 1 rounding out the top 10. OVR Knock there in 11th, GT10's Deval in 12th. IRT's Slash in 13th with FGE's Brent in 14th, and of course VMV's Rizzo there in 15th place. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see who got the fastest lap of the race, but yeah, Imwa finishing outside the points in 16th place, and of course our three non-finishers here tonight was IRT's Spyros, FGE's Paulus, and then of course LR's Turbo Toms. So no points there for LR, but it's okay. Maybe next week they'll have another chance to get some points, because next week, guys, we head to the jewel in the crown of the F1 calendar. We head to Monaco. The unforgiving nature of the Monte Carlo Grand Prix is going to be very interesting. Qualifying is going to matter above all. Pit stop strategy is going to matter above all. Guys, when it comes to risky overtakes, it doesn't get any riskier than going for an overtake in Monaco. And we've seen drivers get their elbows out so far in some of the races that we've seen here in EML. But at Monaco, you get your elbows out, you could be in the wall. So we're going to see what the drivers are going to do when it comes to the Monaco Grand Prix next week. But guys, that has been it for me tonight. Again, a massive shout out to our sponsors at Ronin Printworks 3D. Doing some fantastic work. Thank you for the sponsor. And of course, guys, I will be back next week for the Monaco Grand Prix. Until then, guys, I've been Michael Edwards, and it is good night from me. Good night.